And what you need to do in the beginning is you need to prototype, because whatever your idea is when you're just starting out a business is wrong. It's not the right idea. It's not going to work. You have to change it, right? And so the best way to do that is to prototype something, get it out there really fast, get it in front of real people that are not your mom and dad, that don't love you and don't care, whether or not your feelings are hurt, and then find out if they're willing to like pay $5 or $10 or $10,000 for it, and then change it until they do.
Hey everybody, welcome to CTO Confidential, and I am here today with Joe Leo, the founder of Def Method, I want to say a software development agency in New York City, based out of New York City. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks so much for asking me to be on the show. I really love it, and I'm excited.
I'm stoked too. I know we met at Scott's event, Artificial Ruby, and yeah. I was super psyched because I want to say I kind of came back into Ruby this year, and we found that event, and we've managed to meet a lot of really cool people there. So I still love the in-person kind of meetup for making connections.
Well, let me tell you something about that meetup, because I also loved meeting you, and both of you guys were there, and I had this experience. I had this like full body experience before I even saw you guys, because I'm like across the room and the meetup, the demonstration portion of the meetup is over. And all of a sudden from across the room, I hear these two Long Island guys chatting up Scott from Sublayer. And I'm born and raised in Long Island. And I just immediately was like, that's my people. What are these guys doing here? And I wanted to go over and just be like, who the fuck let you guys in here? Because I had that immediate connection. I definitely wanted to know what you guys were up to. And, and of course, we're from Long Island, so we talk, and I knew immediately. And, it was exciting. It was inspirational, really. I love to see guys from.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I want to say out here on Long Island, there are not a lot of software agencies. And
right.
We had founded, like we were talking to Scott, we made our own meetup on Long Island because you really had to go to the city to find agencies that did good work. I spent years of my career commuting, and so I'm always stoked to see it. The same thing. I know what you mean about that. When I started in this industry, I felt like a lot of software engineers were very like almost like polished coming out of like Ivy League schools, and I felt so out of place. So whenever I see someone from Long Island, New Jersey, like any tri-state area, they have that way of speaking. I'm like, okay, my people are here. Like,
exactly. Yeah. I didn't go to any Ivy League school either, but the thing is that, and we're going to get into that on the show, the thing that matters more than that is your grit and determination. And people from Long Island, we got that in spades. Really, we know how to work, we know how to get through, we know how to get after something, we know how to not let go of it, and you need that more than you need some high level education. That's for sure.
That is for sure. It's definitely driven me through most of my career, and sort of as a side project, I like had to learn all that other stuff as an aside. But man, the grit, the faith, all of it, like just really pushing you through to see that last 20%, so to speak, through. So I'd love for you though, I'd love for you to introduce your agency, because you were a sponsor at Artificial Ruby, but just kind of for the viewers, kind of give me a high level view of what your agency does and what you do.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I'm Joe. I run Def Method, which is a software consultancy. So we modernize Rails applications when breaking things is expensive. And the reason that we do that is because typically when software gets successful, or it's part of a successful enterprise, whether that's a small business or a large business, what tends to happen is that it starts to really matter when things break. And it doesn't really in the beginning. I mean, that's why move fast and break things was such a famous, expression back in like the early 2000s, is because, in the very beginning, you're just trying to get users, you're trying to get market signal, you're trying to find people that are going to be interested in what you're doing, are going to pay for what you're doing. Once you get past that point, things get harder. And, that could be that there's revenue risk, right? It could be that there's audit risk, compliance risk. You're in healthcare, there could be HIPAA, there could be, personal information risk. at some point there's just reputational risk, right? Like you don't want this thing to go, you don't want this thing to break, you don't want it to fall out because you don't want, 100,000 pissed off people on your social media talking about you. And those are the kind of places where we really excel. So we modernize applications, build features, evolve software applications in those kind of situations.
That's amazing. And I remember the tagline well. I said, man, I wish I had thought of that, because it's just such a great, I was like, because this is the thing that, when Justin and I started, and we do a lot of startup work in our agency, and I love that kind of work. Like you said, you move fast, you break things, you're working with like these dynamic people. The problem with that from a business perspective is you're like almost like a VC, where like 90% of these businesses aren't around, and you got to keep finding.
Right, so you got to keep finding more. Yeah. I know, I've been there. Although I have to say, going onto your website, what I really loved is that you did something that I did not do in the beginning, and you specified a niche. Like you go on to your website, it's like, hey, here's what we want. Here's who we work best with. Here's what we do. Here's what you get. And a whole bunch of stuff that like you might assume. And you're not going to get that with us, right? You're not going to sign some long-term contract. You're not going to, and so that is great. Now, yeah, there's good and bad with everything, right? With you guys, probably the sales cycle shorter, but you got a high amount of turnover. We've got longer sales cycles, but the turnover is lower. So there's always positives and negatives. I think the biggest thing is when you specialize, you let people self-identify. Like, oh yeah, that's me. I need that help, right? And I didn't do that in the beginning. I didn't do it for a long time. I was just like, well, we're generalists and we can do all this stuff. So there's people that want to pay me to do X and there's people that want to pay me to do Y, and those things are totally different. But so what? It's money. I'd like it. And it's good. It's fine. You could take that. And what I learned is that, saying yes to people to leads is different than stating who your ideal customer is, stating it and going after it.
That's what I learned too. Like, you're still going to get leads that don't quite fit, and you can still choose to take those
you
or
make a
not
decision
based on your cash flow. It happens. Like, and we've definitely done stuff where I was like, man, that was a mistake. Like, we shouldn't. And the thing that went wrong was like, as an agency, it's so, I always tell people that every bad decision I've ever made is over money, because cash flow gets tight. Something comes in, you're like, it's not quite the thing, but you know what? We could do it. Let's just make it work. Right. And then you're like, all right, I wish I didn't take that, because right around the corner, what you couldn't see was there was the better deal that was like sitting behind that somewhere, and it can be hard now. Now, you guys have an interesting niche though that we never did though, which was niching kind of on the framework and like niching into the Ruby on Rails space. What was that always the call, or did you kind of make that call later on?
No, I made that call recently in 2025. Actually, we were niching down, if that's even a term. We kind of started as we were generalist, and we did a whole bunch of different work. And then, and look, it's a different time. We started the business 12 years ago in 2014, 2015, 2016. First of all, we were really small. Second of all, there was so much work, right? There's zero interest rates going on for 10 years. Every stupid idea was getting funded. And so we got, we were able to work on cool projects and get a lot of money for it. We've had to change things over the years. And so what we started to do is we said, okay, well, we want, we're here for your high stakes effort. We weren't quite at like high risk, but we were like, hey, we want to get these high risk efforts. We want to find, what's the hardest thing you're working on, right? And that worked for a little while. And then it was kind of like pre and post pandemic. And then, a couple of years ago, we started to say, what we really want to do is niche it down a little bit more. And the fact is, Ruby is is kind of my home. It's not the first language I learned by any stretch, but it was my favorite by far, is my favorite by far. When I got into Ruby as a software engineer, I just loved it. I loved the community. I loved all the people. I loved all the meetups. I loved all the startups that were built on it. I loved all the agencies that were focused on it. And so when I decided to make that turn, it really was like coming home. And, I've done all of this work. The other thing that dovetails with that is like, okay, so I have a lot of connections. I used to organize the Gotham Ruby conference, written, I'm an author of the Well-Grounded Rubyist, and we've got, we've got 3 editions, we've got a 4th one coming out. I've been involved in all these meetups, all these conferences, spoken at conferences. So it really felt like a natural thing to come back to.
That's amazing. Yeah, I saw the book, and actually, I believe I read maybe one of the early editions of the book when I had first started writing Ruby myself.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, I came in as a front end developer, and I went down the JavaScript TypeScript path, but I was actually, I want to say it was the JavaScript CoffeeScript TypeScript path.
Oh yeah, I remember
That was my
CoffeeScript. Yeah. Yeah.
And I started writing Ruby because Node got frustrating for me because of there was a lot of issues when I started building bigger applications in Node when Node was still in version like 6, 7, very early. Switched, and we were writing everything in Rails at that time, and I really, really loved it. And then I kind of ended up back in the TypeScript world for many years. And then AI comes along, and I'm reading all this TypeScript code because I'm generating everything, and I'm just getting like so sick of looking at it. And I had this like moment where I was like, I think I want to go back to Ruby because I preferred it. Like I hate. I'll give people the best example I can give you. Like just take a date. Ruby is 1 day ago. That's literally what you read.
Yeah, yeah, right.
In TypeScript, it's like new date times 60 times 60 times.
Yeah.
Like it's just like not clear to you. And then there's also like the type errors started to get to me too. Not so much that like that was another big shift for me is going from a strongly typed. I was very in that functional programming mindset. Coming back to dynamic types, I was finding that even though TypeScript was strongly typed, with AI, it was still like it would deploy past and the type checker would blow up. And I was like, why are you not?
Yeah.
I was like, why are you not catching this?
Right.
The types would just chew up context, right? These just like giant error messages. And I had realized that like I had almost gotten used to being in the asylum. So like I was able to fix type errors from my intuition. I was never actually reading the type errors that it was outputting because they were incomprehensible.
Right.
So I go back to Ruby. I reread Sandy Matz's book on object-oriented programming, and I kind of like reorient my brain. And then I'm like, okay, and then I'm just flying. And like now every project we've built this year, I'm like, listen, Rails should be your default. The other thing I had noticed was I like that Ruby, and you work with legacy Ruby, which is amazing because when I look back at old Ruby code bases I had on Ruby 3, Ruby 4, Ruby 5, and look at Ruby 8, it's pretty similar. It's remarkably similar. Versus if I look at Next.js that I write now compared to Next.js like 5 years ago, just not like aged like milk. Like I couldn't even incomprehensible.
That's an interesting point, you know. I like that. And I like, Irina Nazarova, she's over at Evil Martians. She said, we like Ruby and we like Rails because we know how to make that scale. And now she works on, she's out in San Francisco. They do a lot of startup work, usually well-funded startups. And that's a great argument to me because you can build your business this way. We know how it works. There are now, there's Shopify exists. Right? Stripe exists. It's not Rails, but that's Ruby. Like these companies are huge. And so you don't have to make this argument anymore of like, oh, don't worry, it's going to be around or it's going to be great. Like that's what I was doing in the early 2000s. Now it's like, hey, there are great companies on there. When you get bigger than Shopify, then we could talk about how we change it maybe. But, so that's a good argument. I think it's an easy prototyping language and framework. And what you need to do in the beginning is you need to prototype because whatever your idea is when you're just starting out a business is wrong. It's not the right idea. It's not going to work. You have to change it, right? And so the best way to do that is to prototype something, get it out there really fast, get it in front of real people that are not your mom and dad, that don't love you and don't care, whether or not your feelings are hurt, and then find out if they're willing to like pay $5 or $10 or $10,000 for it, and then change it until they do. And I think Ruby on Rails is great. It's well suited for that.
I absolutely love that because that's really the thing that, and nobody believes us when they come to us. Like we get all the startups, they come, I'm like, listen, this is going to change. It's not going to look like you think. And like, they'll be like, oh, but all these people love it. And like you said, it's the mom, it's the dad. You know who you need to talk to is somebody that hates it. And also somebody that's willing to pay for it before you build it. That's like the holy grail. I have not even cracked that myself, which is a problem so big that people are willing to pay you
to build it
the day you release it. The day you release it, I need access. Like this is so
big. It exists. I mean, there are people who go out and get letters of intent, and I do some angel investing, and so people try to get those LOIs, like, oh, we got these 10 people, they'll pay for it as soon as we put it out there, and that's good. It's better than just kind of a wing and a prayer. But you're right. You really don't know, no matter how much, even no matter how much people love it. Sometimes people love it, love it, love it. But then you ask for like $5 a month and all of a sudden they don't love it anymore. And,
Yeah.
and that's so really, and we always learn this. I learned this a long time ago. I mean, even when we're trying to work with clients, sometimes the best thing to do is to try to get $1 out of them, right? Because, $1 is the thing that is actually the biggest thing that trips you up. It's not the $60,000. It's like, are you even willing to spend money on this? Or are you really just looking for something for free? And, free software is great. We use it all the time. But at the end of the day, people need to get paid. People need to eat, right? And so that's what we're all going for.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I think that people got used to this idea, and it's starting to end. The idea of like subsidized software. This is like building an agency. You come face to face with this a lot, especially when I was in the Node world. I had built a few startups, and we had used a database called Fauna, and it was this like NoSQL database. And I really liked it because it was like distributed NoSQL. It didn't have a lot of the pitfalls. It had like a relational model, but it didn't have the pitfalls of Mongo. So you could be very loose with how you put data in there. And I thought it was great for startups. And then one day they were like, we couldn't raise money. We went out of business. And like, I was kind of like, I used them for a few years, and thankfully nothing that was on there was nothing on there was anything that needed to continue running. They were all kind of failed experiments. But I was so glad I didn't put anything mission critical on this thing. Yeah. But I was like, man, everybody was paying for this. People who used it loved it. Oh, well, the free tier, like you have this like free tier that lots of people are using. And that was really the problem, which is like, well, what if everybody just paid $5 a month? Or just what it was worth? Could we have kept it running? You know, like could the business have been sustainable? I don't know what they were throwing their money at, but this is like, you talk about the zero interest period. I think we're in that a little bit now with the AI models too, where like they're really cheap at the moment. I think they may not continue to be. So
well, maybe they are, but you guys were just talking about this a week ago or so, right? About people that are bragging about how much money they're spending on their on their models. I couldn't believe it. I almost fell out of my chair when I heard that. I mean, I've got a big company. I spend, if I spend $200 on a model, I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. I don't know if that's worth it. I got to see an ROI on that.
Yeah. I almost don't believe it. I just can't understand it in my head. I'm like, wait, $10,000, one developer spending $10,000 in a single day.
Yeah.
Like, are they spawning crazy processes? Did any of that ship?
It doesn't make any sense. And also to brag about it, like you guys hit it on the head. If you're bragging about it, that means you're spending somebody else's money. Because, if it was your business and your money, you would take the money. You wouldn't spend the $10,000. Right? No. I mean, it's a crazy thing. We talk
about that all the time. It's so different, like running a business that has to be profitable versus a business that just has to grow at all costs. And like it's like you're speaking two different languages. I imagine you're in that same spot. Like the early years of growing the agency, one of the things I'm struggling with is the ups and downs, like boom and bust. And then how do you hire around that? And then the people saying to me, like, you must remove yourself from the process. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm the only person that cannot take a salary if there's any.
Yeah. No, I totally identify with that. And I've not taken a salary at different times running Def Method. I mean, what can I tell you? All right. So the first thing I can tell you is that I think you're already on the right track, because I think the path to predictable revenue is in the narrowing of your niche. And I think that you're starting to do that already. And even if you wind up in a totally different niche, you already know how to do it. Like you're exercising that muscle, and that's important. And for me, it took me a long time to learn that lesson. To an extent, it's not going to get totally smooth if it's services. Because, we've had times when we've had 15 people on a project and we're making a lot of money. That project, it's going to end at some point, right? Maybe they give you a month, maybe they give you 2 months, but no matter what, you're not going to find, a soft landing spot for those 15 people like the day after the project ends. Like there's going to be some lumpy revenue there. So, I mean, what do? I keep my expenses as low as I possibly can. And I try to save the money I make in the boom times. Because I think when you're running an agency, I think you need a bigger buffer than maybe even a product company. I don't know. Especially if, like you said, you got to make a profit. it's a two-edged sword, I guess. When you're doing work, when you're at you're running a startup, let's say, and it's got a bunch of investment. This is another thing that I've always thought was crazy when people are like, hey, we raised, $10 million. We got $15 million. And I guess that's a kind of a flex. But in my head, I'm always like, hey, you got to pay that back, right? They didn't just give it to you. Like they gave you 10 million because they want 100 million. And, but the thing is, you and I know you run an agency, you run a business. Yes, it's got to be profitable. But if it is profitable, you could just take the money. You don't actually have to give it to anybody. Right. And so for me, I've always tried to build up that buffer because I know there's going to be lean times and I'm not going to want to let go of these engineers that are doing great work. And, even that doesn't stop everything. Right. I've had to do it over the years, but it does cushion you. It gives you a little bit of time to breathe and reset and go back out of the market and fill that up again.
Yeah, it's very much like one of the things we always think is like, if you're not growing, you're dying kind of thing. Like you really, that one of the key things to the way our agency works is like Justin can always focus on the marketing. And even if I get sucked into a bunch of projects, and only this year we're making the big bet on the YouTube channel and the social, and like where I'm making the time out of every single day because I'm like, all right, like we got to get to the next level of this thing and push past that. And we have a lot of good, strong recurring revenue now, customers that have been with us a long time. And that horizon looks good. So I'm like, while we have that, we should double down on this because this is going to be that moment. And you got to learn to kind of, like you said, flex that and try and find these like long-term contracts and all that good stuff, which is always so tricky. Have you found that the way, like when I worked at agencies in the past, a lot of the marketing, I feel like, or even the sales process was driven by like a salesperson. Some of the agencies I worked at in the past was very like, there was a salesperson. There wasn't really a social motion back then. It was almost like cold calling style.
Right.
Today, I feel like cold calling, cold email, cold LinkedIn. Are you finding that works? Is that in your repertoire? We have not had any luck with that.
So I'm going to answer your question, but I want to first go back. I want to congratulate you, first of all, on 100,000, really 130,000 subscribers and growing, because I think that is amazing. And we talked about this right before the show started. You guys did like a 15-minute episode on the unboxing of the 100,000 subscriber gift. And I actually thought it was incredible. It was an incredible 15 minutes because you talked about, how you had to make a bunch of changes. No one change was magic, right? But that you made a commitment and you started to commit to doing it every day. And you were doing it consistently for a long time. And even when you weren't consistent, you were persistent in getting back to that. And then that change of like getting back to it every day, it was such a great story because I really feel like you've got to put in the work on something that is showing some kind of signal. And that was the other thing. You said that you were doing it for so long without signal. And when you got it, you decided to fan the flames. And I love that because you've got to really fall in love with the work in this job because the outcomes are not going to come when you want them to. They're not going to be as big as you expect them to be, but sometimes they'll be bigger. And it's just not going to work out the way you think it's going to work out. You can't predict the future. So what you have to do is you got to focus on the work. Now, to answer your question, we do some cold outreach, and I've done it like 1,000 different ways. And there is one way that we found works for us. It doesn't mean it's going to work for you. I think that what you're doing right now, and I forget who gave me this advice, but it's very good advice, which is if you're a small business, focus on the one channel that works. Find one, and if you don't have one right now, pick one and say, that's the one I'm going to go after. For us, it's LinkedIn. For you guys, you've got YouTube and that thing, and I know that spreads out to all these different channels, but really it starts on YouTube. It starts with the podcast. For us, it's LinkedIn. I started posting daily on LinkedIn in like 2023, and just like you, like no signal for like 2 years. But I learned a lot during that process. And I joined these LinkedIn groups to try to we're going to post each other's stuff. We're going to repost. We're going to learn the algorithm. We're going to do all this stuff, and a lot of it, you're a software engineer. So am I. A lot of it goes against what I really want to be doing. I don't want to be on LinkedIn. I don't want to be on any social media. I want to be writing code or I want to be leading a business. But I did it because I really felt like I was going to be able to, if there was one place I was going to be able to, make it work, it was going to be there. Well, after a couple of years, I did start to see some signal. And so then I started to commit to it even more. And I said, okay, what can I do in terms of like context? I want to be authentic. I want to actually give people something that's part of me and not just post a bunch of random crap that AI generates. And so, so I started to do the newsletter, and that became Essential Complexity, which I do right now. And, and I break that up and I do several takes and I put that on LinkedIn. We have the Ruby AI podcast, which is amazing. That's not even really a Def Method thing. It's just a thing that me and Valentino do, and we love it. And so that gives me a chance to promote people. So we kind of cut that up and we put it on LinkedIn, and we've gotten a lot of people. So then this year we started to say, okay, let's start reaching out to people. And what I absolutely hate on LinkedIn is something that's like some cold outreach from LinkedIn Sales Navigator, because you can always tell, like the in-mail that says, hey, I love what you're doing, or, oh, hey, I stumbled across your profile. No, you didn't. You fucking did not. Stop stumbling. Go after somebody, right? And then just tell them, and this is what I did. I just started saying, hey, I've been in Ruby for like 20 years, and I see you're doing Ruby too. It'd be cool to connect, right? And like 25% of the people I reach out to will connect. And then, awesome. And then I give it another few days, and I say, hey, I wrote this thing. What do you think about it? I'll ask a question. And, one out of every, 10 or so responds. And about maybe like half of them won't respond, but they'll subscribe. And then I'll just, maybe I'll send something to say, hey, if you want to ever talk, I'm available. And that has been good because it's authentic. I'm not a used car salesman. I don't want to smile and dial every single day and just, try to hook up with a random person and get them to buy something. And the thing is, people don't buy like that anyway, right? In our industry. That's not a small thing. Right, yeah, that's not a small thing. They're going to spend a lot of money. You can't just do it on a whim. And so, but I want people to know who I am, get to know me so that the next time something comes up, maybe they're thinking about Def Method.
That's awesome. That was kind of the strategy that worked for us. It was LinkedIn and, like you said, years of nothing. And then you're like, we spearfish.
LinkedIn, pick a channel and then give it a lot of time. Right.
That's like, and go long. And like, I would say if you're an agency, probably not like TikTok, Instagram. I know there's people that go after. I think that's LinkedIn is nice because at least there's a lot of professionals there, and you will eventually, like, we found the spearfishing method work too, which is just looking for people who are posting like, I'm looking for a dev agency and like that kind of thing. And then the podcast was great because it allows us to kind of give something first. So like Justin did his podcast before I ever started doing this, which was just interviewing founders, because that was kind of our target market. So we were like, well, we're just going to give you a platform. And if in the conversation, sometime along the way, you think about you need software, well, now we're out there. And a lot of times we haven't done any work for a guest, but they've like recommended people. And that's like the interesting piece. And then there comes the networking events and getting out there and doing all of that. So I always find there's no like you said, there's no shortcut. You just got to persist and just fall in love with the work, really.
Yeah.
And I think that's even with just the software work in general. Every time you sign a big contract, you think it's going to be huge. You really can't be chasing the end game, this exit, like that. I think that's like, that changed for us, is like when we finally were like, we're going to run this a long time. And like that, this is going to be our career, and we're just going to do the work, and we're going to love doing the work, and we're going to serve the customers the best way we can. And that has produced a lot more fruit than like constantly chasing some kind of a big, some kind of a whale, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's true. And look, I've tried it. I've had salespeople working at Def Method. I've hired and fired a whole bunch of salespeople. We've gone through different methodologies, different kind of outreach strategies, cold outreach, warm outreach. We've done HubSpot campaigns, a bunch of Salesforce stuff. Look, I mean, and the whole thing is like, that wasn't wasted time or effort. We're just learning what works for us. And, it takes as long as it takes, right? You got to keep your head above water. You got to keep fighting, to stay in business and keep the game going. I read something, it's The Psychology of Money. And now I forget who the author is. I can say it after this though. But when they were talking, the guy was talking about these different companies, and he was talking about Google, and he was talking about definitely Apple, a couple of the huge tech companies, and he was just talking about the long tail, because he said, these companies become known for 2 or 3 or 5 products. And they're enormous enterprises, right? But they've actually tried thousands. They've tried so many different things. And so many things there are things that I had never even heard of. And I've been in tech for 20 years. And, and they just fall off the radar because those things didn't work. You just have to stay alive long enough to find that one thing that works. It may not be right at the beginning. It might be 10 years in.
Right. I think that, 37 Signals is a good example of that too. I think they had a whole suite of products.
Yeah,
Basecamp
that's right.
was the one. And I think he still says, even though like, hey, I mean, I use Hey email.
Yeah.
And he's like, it still wasn't the same success that Basecamp was. And
yeah, I believe that.
Dropbox is my other favorite example because I feel like they hit it. They've tried a million other things, and
right.
I feel like they've just said, "Hey, we're just going to do files."
Just do your Dropbox thing. Yeah, I know, it's true. And look, I'm never going to fault a company for trying to innovate and trying to do something new. But you get big, and then all of a sudden you think, well, actually we got to be in 2 or 3 things. I've had that too. Def Method has been, bigger at times than it is today. And you get this pressure of like, okay, well, really, we should add another service line. Really, we should be doing something with, for us at that point, it was designers. Really, we should have UI, UX designers. We should have a whole department. We should hire a person. We should do this. We should try and sell it. And there's nothing wrong with that. We tried it. Didn't work. Selling design is way different than selling engineering. And I'm not a designer, right? But so there's a lot of pressure, and I would say if you're going to do that, if you're going to extend or you're going to try something new, do try it, but make sure you're revisiting your fundamentals. Like, what is it that really makes you great and makes you satisfied in your work, and then kind of grow from there. Try to make your initiatives come from that fundamental place.
It's interesting too because Justin, my partner, is he's a career SEO, so we've tried to sell that out on its own, SEO and marketing. We've tried to also sell design because I was like, hey, we had some design and did the same thing. For whatever reason, it never quite worked for us either. It felt like people came to us, but they still had they want specialty vendors, and I kind of learned that from the market that like going back to that niching thing, that you sort of need to do that because people almost demand it. They don't feel like you could do all of the things really well. Mm-hmm. And I think that one of the other areas we excel, I think now in this AI kind of programming era, our customers come to us for quicker, that MVP turnaround or something they're doing internally. And a lot of times like that design process slows things down so much more than people realize, even with all the new tools that we have. It's like there's the design process. Sometimes a client will sit in that for 2 months or longer, just like ruminating and getting everything right. And then you got the handoff, and then you have the front end dev, and then it has to be matched up perfectly against the design. If it doesn't match perfectly, there's all this friction. And even if we're generating all this code, so like when I was always like, one of the superpowers is I kind of had a bit of a design background. And so the engineers we try and get are sort of these product people now, where you could kind of skip that process and get right into the build. Mm-hmm. And I think that works really well for early products. Or sometimes like these other industries that we work in, it's not that they're early products. They're just they know exactly what they need and they don't want it to be super pretty. Like they're like, listen, just pick a UI kit, needs to be like a form, does this, really straightforward. And every time we've tried to stray from that and like, oh, we're going to have designers and we're going to do some Webby award type thing.
Right.
It just never worked out for us.
Right. Yeah, no, I understand. And, if you can make it work out for you, then that's great. And maybe that becomes, a different thing. I also got a good piece of advice that I didn't listen to a couple of years ago. We're building something out. We're building a product of our own. And I'm in Vistage. It's back here, which is CEO. It's a CEO peer group. It's fantastic. It's the best choice I've ever made for my professional development career. But so I had a guy who was in my peer group, and I was talking about this product I was building, and he was just like, "Don't do it." I'm like, "What are you talking about? This is a great idea." He's like, "Don't do it." And he didn't say don't do it because it's not a good idea. He said, "What you would need is another CEO to run this, because you're thinking about it like it's going to be a product, but it is actually a business, and you need somebody." And he said, and there aren't that many great leaders in the world. You're going to have to hire somebody that's exactly like you, paid exactly like you, and you have to do it for this product that you know nothing about yet. Like you have no market signal, you have nothing. And I was like, well, thanks for your advice, but I'm going to do it anyway. And, and I continued on, and I tried it, and yeah, it didn't work. And a lot of the reason it didn't work was because, I mean, one, we're trying to build this thing, this AI product in the age of AI, and only 0.01% of those products are going to work. But another reason is that, yeah, anytime I dove into that, I was giving the services business short shrift, and anytime I dove into services, I was doing the opposite to the product. And really, it's a very challenging thing. And so I'd say if you're an SMB, if you're a one or two founder kind of company, do one thing and do it well is a really great adage to live by.
I love that. I love it. That's one of the big reasons why I've started to release a lot more open source. We still I just started putting, because I saw actually what Evil Martians did a lot of, and I've seen other agencies do this too, just like contributing a lot of open source that turns into kind of more work for them that they want to do. But like you said, I don't really want to have to service a SaaS thing. And my co-founders sometimes will say like, oh, well, yeah, but then we'll have money just like coming in. I said, yeah, but then there's all the problems with that. I go, when it goes down, I got to wake up to bring it back. I got to, I said, building on that scale sort of changes things. And then it becomes just a whole nother marketing effort. And every time we do it, even as recently as like a month ago, we did a show on it. It's like, we just learned like, crap, we don't like the audience we've been cultivating doesn't care about that product. We got to go do it all over again for this product.
Yeah. Let me give you another challenge. We started building this thing and we found, oh, hey, you know what? This is an AI product in the age of AI. We need to just like slap stuff together. Like we need to generate, where's my friend who's going to burn $10,000 in tokens? Like we need that kind of person. Not really. But we need somebody who's going to just generate a bunch of code, not going to look at anything, is going to just, Steve Yege this thing together and like see if it works. But guess what? I spent 12 years hiring people that fix things that are broken. They're not the same guys. They're going to go put a pile of crap together and call it done. And I'm not saying that, that's bad. It's certainly not bad. It's great. But it's like you're trying to flex, two different muscles at the same time. You're not really going to be able to make it work. Okay, over here I'm telling everybody that we got to modernize things and move carefully. And over here I'm just going to tell all these engineers, hey, you know what, forget everything I said yesterday. We got to do this fast, quick and dirty.
That's totally, it's so funny because as an agency, you get used to this idea that I'm going to be held responsible and look really, really bad if like something I do goes wrong, or even like when it comes to like people like, oh, well, you could just like build that so fast. I go, yeah, but if I like home grow my own, like, I don't know what, Kubernetes or whatever. Yeah. And then it goes down, I'm going to look like the idiot because I didn't use the thing that was already made. Like everyone's like, oh yeah, you don't need any services. We could do this. We could do that. I go, oh, well, wait.
Yeah. I mean, look, I mean, I have so much experience with this because I'm just like, yeah, okay, I don't, here's something I don't want to do. Let me just build a product to do it. And the funny thing is, like, if you're super technical, and maybe even if you're not, you could do that with like one thing. Then when you do another thing, you're like, oh, shit, I actually have to maintain that other thing. And it didn't work because, the API upstream changed. And now I got to fix that. Now I got to go fix this thing that I'm trying to make, and I'm trying to save like, I don't know, $200 in SaaS fees. And I'm spending, 8 hours a week trying to fix it. It's not worth it. Just spend the $200.
It's really, really true. And when you don't have people working in it all the time too, like it's not so easy to just like set the project aside, let it run, go back to your business, and then come back 3 months later when something breaks on somebody and be like, wait, I like haven't really looked at this thing in 3
It's true.
months.
Yeah, it's true.
It's a totally different world. I think that there's some people look at service businesses and, we've definitely looked at it ourselves, like the grass is greener in like the product world.
Yeah, I know. I've said that phrase exactly. Yeah.
You're just like, maybe not. I don't know. And I think in the age, this like kind of dovetails into the next thing is like in the age of AI, I get this weird feeling that services are going to be even bigger. Because I think that it's still hard for somebody. So yes, if you're vibe coding your own solution and you're reviewing your solution, you're not going to be that hard on yourself. So like whenever you see people on Twitter like bragging about what they're doing, I'm like, yeah, well, you're not paying anybody to do it. So you're not going to like beat them up over like the button not working. You're just going to like,
and you're not asking anybody else to use it, I think is another big part of it.
That's another thing, right? If you're the only user, right? So, but then there's this side of it where I'm like, I get a lot of businesses who are like, just like, listen, we're using some of the tools. Is this they even are development shops who are like, my developer used 100,000 tokens. Is that normal? And then I was like, actually, I like never thought, like, I was like, I just have this max plan, but I was like, I should just look at it. And then I'm like, no, that's pretty normal, or no, that's crazy. That's not normal. There's a lot of folks just looking for help with implementing more software. So like on your side of things, are you guys seeing more of that? Like just, I almost am seeing an uptick. I feel like just like an interest in software suddenly. That's what I would say.
Yeah, you guys said this in an episode recently where you said this is the age of David, right, against Goliath, which I loved because it's so, it's such a challenge, right, to the established order, and I don't disagree. I mean, what can I say? The numbers for Def Method through March are the strongest. It's the strongest quarter we've had since 2024. And, and probably one of the 2 or 3 best that we've had this decade. So that's good. That's nice. And, and what is it from? I think that in part, you're right. There is a need for super specialized agencies, and people know that they can get that, right? They can get exactly what they want, right? They can go to your website and they can say, yes, this is exactly what I want. Sign me up. They can go to my website. They could do the same thing. I think that another piece of it is that, and I write all about this. So Amazon has everybody, puts in a mandate, says everybody's got to use code gen tools, right? And we got to use CodeGen to fire up a bunch of code and, fire up pull requests and build faster, right? I'm not picking on Amazon, except that they're very public. I mean, companies all over the country are doing this. And so the immediate thought to that is, oh shit, now they're using AI tools. They're going to write code faster. They're not going to need as many software developers. But that doesn't really match up to the history of markets, which is that if company A is doing this and they're able to generate 10 times as much code, company B is going to try to generate 10 times as much code too. They're not going to lay off developers to say, oh, hey, we can just hit the same old markers that we used to be able to hit, but we can do it cheaper. Somebody's going to realize, hey, you know what? If we generate a lot more code and that turns into more revenue and more profit, then we're going to hire more people to do more of it. Now, it's beyond, it is certainly not proven. In fact, the opposite is proven, that more code means better code or more features, right? Because more code is really generally a liability. You really want less of it. But to the extent that you're going to get the outcome that everybody expects, this is capitalism. They're going to throw more people at this. So that's one thing. The other is what is really needed when code generation tools generate a whole bunch of code is careful and thoughtful software engineers that understand how systems work, understand how things break, and know how to fix them. Or alternatively, know how to avoid those kind of potholes and build things that last and can be scaled, right, and can be brought to the market. And those kind of skills are important. Today, those kind of skills are in people more than they are in machines. And I think there is a big demand for all of those things all over the industry. That's what we're seeing.
Yeah. That's one thing I completely agree, because I think about this idea of when I worked at bigger companies, we always had a backlog that just seemed to be bottomless, right? That like we were never going to get through. And I was like, well, imagine we just wiped the whole thing out. There's going to be more like that. Just like, first of all, if something was like, let's just say something that we build takes off, starts becoming a huge revenue driver to the company. Like you said, the company is going to pour more money into that bet. And now it's going to be like, well, now we need to grow it because that experiment really worked. So ideally more of those are working out. The other side of it is, if these are maintenance tasks, there's probably just more maintenance tasks. Like the minute you ship the code, it's already rotting. So you're like, okay, well, now there's going to be a whole nother thing that we have to be prepared for and get ready for. And so I am kind of, it's weird to me. I think that a lot of I think other people have written this too. It's just like, I don't think the layoffs are driven by AI making people so efficient. I just
no, of course not.
It's like money's not cheap anymore. Like
I'll tell you what. Yeah, I'll tell you what. Nobody wants to say this. Layoffs. I mean, not that nobody, but nobody at a big company wants to say this. Layoffs are driven by going going back to the pandemic, they're driven by remote work and the fact that you can get cheaper software engineers overseas and call them contractors, and you don't have to call them employees. And at some point, there may be a reckoning over that, but that point is not today. So it's a lot easier, it's a lot sexier, and it'll hurt your stock less if you say, hey, we got AI, so we're super efficient now. What's really happening is that, a lot of people are not getting paid because there is this huge market disparity. The fact is, if you are just a box on a screen, then why do I have to pay, your box $200,000 and I pay this other box $75,000, right? You have to have some kind of differentiator, which, to be honest, it's always been the case. You always need to have some differentiator. There's always got to be something special about you, or else I'm not going to pay you. I'm going to find somebody else who's also not special but costs me half as much.
Yeah, and I think there was like an inflation to like software engineers' salaries. And as a software engineer, sometimes people are surprised that I say this. I go, I think that in some scenarios, we may have been getting paid too much. And I was I knew people that worked at large companies making insane, 3, 4, 500,000. I was like, you're making as much as a surgeon. You're a self-taught UI engineer, not even more niche than that. And I was like, this is not a scenario that most people I feel I can live with. I have friends who are go to nursing school, go and become a physician's assistant, don't make anywhere near that kind of money, and they're dealing with people's health care. Not that I think that there was, and then that's further compounded by the companies that were paying those salaries were not profitable. So they were raising money, sucking up tons of talent, competing for that talent. And then companies like your company, my company, lots of agencies, it's not really that easy to pay somebody $500,000. I was like, no, I was like, if I ever could make $500,000 a year, I would be I was like, it's hard for you don't realize how much $200,000 a year is until you have to pay really sustain somebody's salary plus their benefits on that. And then you look at these companies and you go, how are they doing it? And then it's, they raised smaller startups. They raised a bunch of money. That's how they figured it out.
Right. And people try, and the investors were thinking, well, I think this will pay off with a big return, but if it doesn't, it's better than putting my money, on the market, because right now it's 0 interest rate and I can get a high return. And I think that you're right about that. I think that another thing to keep in mind is that we are really right at the beginning with AI generated code. I think that it's the wrong mindset to think that we're just going to build the same SaaS apps that we've been building for 20 years. It's a wrong mindset to think, when there have been a lot of shifts in my career, one of them was, just cloud computing becoming, a thing. Because before that, everybody just had servers under their desk or in a room somewhere. And then, when cloud computing hit, I was one of the wrongly unimpressed people. I was just like, what the hell is the difference? This is just somebody else's machine. Who cares? Right? But I was wrong about that, because what happened was that simple architectural shift, which is nowhere near the scale of AI, allowed for the building of so much bigger and more complex networks, right? That's how all of a sudden we got Kubernetes, and all of a sudden we got all these different pieces. We got, DevOps became a term and a career. All of those things started to happen. Even like SREs and, and release engineers, these kinds of things didn't really exist. You basically had one person who managed the server room. It wasn't the same thing. But what I'm saying though is that another layer of complexity was waiting for us that very few to zero people really knew about. We just knew that there was something there that we could build on. And I think that's where we are with AI, where we're like, hey, machines are going to be able to write code. Machines are going to be able to write and modify their own code. So what happens? There's kind of like an order of magnitude complexity that we're still just at the very, very start of. And when that happens, there really is no telling what's going to be needed. But I mean, knowing American capitalism or just global capitalism, I would say that, they're going to keep sucking people and resources into the machine to try to churn out a profit.
Yeah. It's so interesting because you talk about how cloud computing changed, added these roles. I even think about how it's changing. One of the things that I had built into a platform that we have built for ourselves, we had a project management platform and a financial forecasting platform that we use to run all our numbers and make sure all the time cards are in line. I built an AI kind of assistant where, because, and I just said, I just like dump stuff into it. And I found myself just using it all the time because I go, I don't really want to learn the UI anymore. I just want to be like, just do the thing, do the thing.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking like, well, what if I could generate different pieces of UI in that? And I think that other folks are starting to do this too. And I'm like, oh, this is going to change UI design a lot. Because, we're building another app for folks who have a brain injury, and a similar scenario where there's like a struggle to learn it. And we're using the old tricks of like, here's a wizard that you can that'll point you through and work. Yeah. And then I'm like sitting here like, do we really need to, like, couldn't you just say like, I want to add this to the app, and it'll add it. And then it'll say, I added a button next time for you because it seems like you do this a lot. Like things like,
that's interesting.
We haven't even gotten there. I just have, and that stuff though, for all the time that we've reduced building these old SaaS models, like it takes nothing for me to build a CRUD app anymore. Now I'm like, wait a minute though, a better UI would be this. But then I give my project manager, I said, listen, I got this assistant. I need you to try and break the permissions layer. And he found a way. He found a way through it. So
sure enough, yeah.
So now I'm like, okay, now I have to design an entire like permissions layer that isn't like putting your authentication in context. Because like that's breakable, but I had to find a way to make that work with, and I was using Ruby LLM, and I was like, what makes the most sense? Suddenly I'm architecting again, right? I'm not like, I'm like thinking about how to build software again. It just changed to a totally different layer. So the old thing got really easy, but now I'm like, is the old thing going to start looking old to our users? Like, are they not going to want that kind of software anymore? And they're going to expect like, hey, I really don't want to have to learn a UI anymore. Right. And I don't want to have to fill in the form fields. I want to just be able to say, my name is Mike. Here's my phone number. I just want to dump my info in. Yeah. Done. So like, I don't know. I think that there's a level we haven't even gotten to yet, and the time to build things goes back up to where it was.
Yeah. I think you're asking the right questions. I don't know the answer either, but I think you're asking the right questions. There's another thing that you reminded me of, which is, this is, we're now in the age of Claudebot and, to a lesser degree, Claude Cowork and, or OpenClaw, right? We don't call it Claudebot anymore, call it OpenClaw. And, I had read an article that left this really strong impression on me. The guy is now the chief of security for OpenClaw. And what he said was that, he had found some security flaws in OpenClaw in the very beginning, and he did the responsible thing, and he contacted, Peter, and he got them fixed. But then he said, there is something here though, which is we have an AI agent that is basically on the loose, and it's got your credentials to something that you care about. Because if you didn't care, then it wouldn't be useful. And it's going to go and act on your behalf. It's going to act as you on something, on a banking app, on a travel application, on a credit card application, something, on LinkedIn, something, right? And we don't have a security model for that. It's not going to stop anybody from doing it because it is too useful, but we don't have a security model. So I wonder, this is again a question I don't have an answer to, but I think it's important to ask, what are the kind of architectural pieces that need to be built and put in place to secure people, our users, who are going to use software like this because they know that they're going to, because it's too useful not to?
Right. Like if I have bots going to make purchases on my behalf, now you start to think like, I do need this integrated into my phone. It should be it should ask me and like biometrically say like, are you sure you're about to do this? Yeah. Buy $3,000 worth of bed sheets, like, or whatever. It's right. And it's like, yes, I give permission to do that. And there's some kind of an authentication model around that, because it is true. Because I've played around with OpenClaw, and I had the founder of Zoe Computer who's looking to do this. And like the first thing I thought is, oh, this is so cool. Like, especially with his tool, I could see it being there's going to be an entire industry of installing this in businesses. Yeah. Just like that's going to be IT of the future. Just like there's people out there, like as crazy as it is for people to believe, there's people who manage Gmail for people who do nothing more than manage the Gmail. This will be a thing where you're like, hey, I do your N8N. I do your
Right.
OpenClaw.
Yeah.
I do your Zo computer. I make sure everybody's got it installed on their machine, and I'm going to enforce the security around it. And like you said, I was inventing this because I was like, this doesn't really.
It doesn't really exist. It has to be invented. Yeah, it does not exist. I mean, I know we don't want to get too much in the weeds, but the fact is, we've built like the entire web security infrastructure is built on kind of one handshake, and then we forget each other, right? And then each click, right? Then we forget who we are. We have to re-authenticate, and that doesn't work with this long-running agent that's going to have your stuff for more than one click. It's going to have your stuff for through an entire session. So we really don't have the answer yet. We will, though. We will build it, but we don't have it today.
Yeah, it's good. It'll be very, very, very cool. And these are, again, more areas where I do feel like as cheap as the old thing got, it just begets it begets a whole bunch of new stuff. I mean, I don't even know where, like, we talk about commerce and it's getting to an interesting place. So I'm excited about where we go. And as weird as it feels right now. And then in terms of like tooling for yourself, like what are your kind of favorite AI tools that you're using now? Just using, yeah.
Yeah, so I've been last year and a half, I've really been dusting off the old software chops, right? Because I had to run a business, not had to, but I've been running a business for a long time. I extracted myself out of day-to-day software engineering a long time ago for my clients, but of course, I like to keep my hands on the code, and now everybody's been talking about this kind of days, somewhere around October, November 2025. Claude and Codex just got a lot better, right? And it started to be really, really effective. And so, from that time, certainly, and before that, I've been building. I was Claude Code for a while, but I changed teams recently. Now I'm all Codex all the time. I think it's a lot better, actually.
I'm gonna have to check it.
Yeah, I think it's a lot stronger. It takes more time, but it gets things right the first time much more frequently, in my experience. So I like that. When I was using Claude Code, I definitely used Superpowers. Superpowers was great. It's a plugin that is open source, but it ships as one of the official plugins for Claude Code. I think that's definitely worth it. And what I try to do then is it's a lot of process. It's a lot of like, okay, well, in my ideal code base, it's I have these guardrails, right? So code coverage should never go down on branch or on the code coverage itself. So we put some things up there, and you just say, okay, you can never fail this, right? Your PRs always have to increase always have to raise the bar. Ruby, it's pretty easy to stick around 95% for total coverage, and you can get to like 80-85% in branch coverage easily, and then just don't let it's AI, just don't let it don't let it pass. Don't let it ship, right? Don't let it slip. And then you can put a lot of other guardrails in. I've found that the Copilot PR reviews have gotten better. They used to be just garbage. Now they're better. They're probably still not the best. One of my engineers was telling me that cursors are better now, and he likes those. So I would say check out Cursor for PR reviews. And I try to. I haven't gone full Gastown, but I do try to work multi-agent. And so, I'll make sure that one agent is working on small tasks that I'm trying to clean up. I have another agent that's doing usually feature work, and I'll usually have a third agent. This isn't always running, but a third agent is usually doing inspection, right? And so they're saying, okay, find me some security flaws, find me some issues that we're going to run into, find me some design challenges. Right, my co-host on the podcast, Valentino, he's got an agent that he just stuffs in like Pooter and working effectively with legacy code. He gets the Michael Feathers book in there. He gets all the books in there, and he says, "Okay, you are now my architect. You go find things that are wrong, that don't conform to this." And you can really get great results. So a lot of it is around tuning those agents and then putting in those guardrails, which I've had a lot.
Awesome. Yeah, I have to. You're the second person now that said use Codex, switch off a Claude Code. So it's so funny. I've got like a bunch of stuff in flight, and I'm like, all right, as soon as I finish the last in-flight thing, I'm going to switch to Codex for the next body of work. And I'm going on vacation next week, so I'm like going to have a no agent week. and then
No,
I'm going to switch over, which
Yeah.
is so funny because so many people have said to me, they're like, oh no, but you can like code on your phone now. I was like, don't tell my wife that. I was like,
Yeah, I know. I was actually going to tell you the same thing, but I'm just going to save it now. I did. I redesigned the Def Method website, which is not some big technical task, but I redesigned the entire website from Slack using OpenClaw while I was at the Queen's Museum with my daughter. I was just like throwing in commands, like, no, this doesn't look right. Do this, do this, do this. And I was done in an afternoon. It was amazing.
Amazing. Yeah, because I do find it's like more addictive than social media sometimes, because I'm like constantly pitching ideas. The other one that I was thinking about using, I don't know if you've used, I have the book right here because I've been reading it, was that layered design for Ruby on Rails. I think they have an AI like analyzer Evil Martians put out that like can check for like your quality of Ruby on Rails design. And I thought
that's interesting. No, I would check that out. Yeah.
I'm excited about that too, because I was like, because anything that increases the quality, I think, and I like the idea of the separate agents, because I found that that's helpful too. Of there's the first pass and the ship, and then like having this like really specific quality agent whose only goal is to improve the quality of the code base, kind of helps trailing behind things.
I think so, and I think having a good. This goes against my instincts, but having a good conversation first, like having a good like planning conversation first, can help a lot, and just making sure that all of that stuff is persisted. Like, the docs folder gets filled with like, this plan, that plan, where are we going? So that, the next agent, I could just say, fire it up and say, hey, look at all the docs, look at where we are. They're all dated. Look at the most recent one, and then, pick the next thing that we're doing.
Yeah, I agree. I do the same thing with the docs folder. I find that like keeping that markdown up to date, and like you said, it's sometimes it can feel a little waterfall.
Yeah.
But I'm always like, no, but you still iterate. It's just sort of like getting all the thoughts out there.
You do. Planning documents are important, and just because you change just because you're going to change doesn't make them not good. I had a really good story with one of my engineers a year ago. He decided to call a design meeting. We were deciding what we were going to do, and before the meeting, he went to like whatever his model of choice was, and he went and he said, give me all of the different ideas for how we might approach this thing. And he what he put together was like this huge document, and then he said, okay, before the meeting, spend 15 minutes, take this thing to your LLM of choice and have it pick it apart, and then come with the ideas, right? And so then everybody came from the same frame of mind, and it wasn't a lot of pre-work, it was 15 minutes. But all of a sudden we were able to come together and put together a design doc, which, as you've already identified, is a totally waterfall thing, except that it only took an hour. When those design docs used to take a month, you would say, well, that's a really big fucking waste of time because it's all going to change. But if it takes an hour, then it's actually a really useful tool. And it really blew my mind. It really started me to think about like, hey, different things are possible in AI, different things that we used to do, and now we put aside for efficiency, reasons, can be revisited.
Yep. Yeah, I'm a big fan of like the UML. I do a lot of that work with clients now because they don't know code, they don't understand any of that, but they can understand a flowchart. And so I'm like, are these the permissions you were looking for? And like, let's just walk through it 3 or 4 times. And so now I can actually bring them into the process in ways that I didn't, or I would have skipped before. I would have been like, let's just put a UI in front of them and then we'll have them react to that. Now it's like, hey, this is really doable because I also didn't have to like become a master of Mermaid or something.
Yeah.
Like
like I know. Thing. But Mermaid is really awesome when you don't have to do any of it by hand.
I'm like, I'm loving it. I'm like, yes, do the Mermaid thing. Put it in the code base, keep it there. Yeah. Amazing. Well, Joe, we're rounding out about an hour now, so I wanted to I come into a few final questions at the end of the show, which are, one of them is, I love to hear your advice for any new engineer entering the field now. What would be if you had to give them one piece of advice?
Oh, all right, we can only give them one.
Or two.
I'm trying to think here. I think the advice I gave to people from, the early days, I think still applies, which is to, while you're hunting, while you're learning, and maybe you're hunting around for a job or you're looking for something, meaningful, go look at some successful open source application, whether it's a framework or it's a nonprofit organization or something, and find a way to contribute, find a way to become useful. Because it will teach you a lot more than any of the tutorials will. It'll teach you how to interact with other software engineers and potentially with the public, whether that's other software engineers or customers. It will teach you how to problem solve, and it will teach you how to work in a large code base, which is what most of software development is. Most software development is not greenfield. Most software development is not like you're writing something for the first time. Most of the time you have to go in and work on something that's legacy, work on something that's been written, and you need to change it, you need to fix it, or you need to extend it. And you'll learn a lot of those tools with in open source, and you'll also generally you'll make some connections and make some maybe make some friends in the process as well.
Amazing. I love that advice, because I do find that, especially when I was starting out, and I see it with new people, like coming up with your own idea too for like a side project can be hard versus jumping into something that's already there. And you never know, you may actually find yourself finding work out of that too.
I mean, I started so many side projects when I was first starting out, and they were all pretty bad ideas. And then, until I finally I asked somebody, "Hey, is this a good idea?" And they're like, "Well, it's been done. I mean, you could do it." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." But if you don't have that, you don't want to be in an echo chamber of one. You don't want to be just you saying, "Oh, what if I do this? What if I do that?" Right? Get into a place where you can be collaborative with somebody. I think that's the way to go.
For sure. And then the next question I have is do you have any book recommendations for the audience?
Except for shamelessly plugging my own.
Yeah. No, definitely recommend that.
Yeah. You should go buy the Well-Grounded Rubyist, Volume 4. It's in stores soon. And it's available now in pre-release. So I think that one book that I've read recently that had a big impact on me was Carol Dweck's Mindset. And I think that is an excellent book, especially if you're an entrepreneur, but really it doesn't matter. You can be in any walk of life. But Carol Dweck did a lot of research on this. There's the book comes at it from different walks of life, whether it's relationships, sometimes it's sports, and it's business. And it's a great way to kind of teach you, like what we were talking about earlier in the episode, right? It's to fall in love with the process, to understand the value in the challenges that you're facing and the growth that you'll experience, and how much better it can get on the other side of that. So I think that's a great one to read, no matter who you are.
Amazing. I love that. Yeah, I've tried. I always ask for the book recommendations. I try and get to them all myself, because I think it's never been a better time to actually read. Even though it seems like we don't need to learn anything anymore, get out there. Sure.
I read fiction constantly. I'm a big reader, but so it's harder for me to get the nonfiction ones in there. But I do try to read, I try to read maybe 5, leadership or mindset or, those kind of books a year. And then the rest, my own personal fun.
So fiction though, what's a good fiction recommendation? Because you never know.
Sure. The best book I read recently, I read it last year, was called The Long Island Compromise by Taffy Broadness, or I'm going to butcher the name now. Yeah, I mean, it's perfect because we got a couple of Long Island kids on this on this podcast. Taffy Broadness-Ackner. And she wrote a book called Fleischman is in Trouble, and that became a TV series. And this is her next book, Long Island Compromise. Yeah, I watched it too. I thought it was great. And then I went and read the book. This book is even better. If you like that, you'll love that one.
Amazing. That's awesome. Yeah, because I still like to read fiction too. I think I sometimes I read older stuff too. I have Neuromancer back here. I've been chipping away at it.
Yeah, you have to chip away at it. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. So sometimes I do that, but and then finally, plugging, where can people find you, follow you? I know you mentioned your podcast. We'll link it all in the show notes, but just so people know.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I'm on LinkedIn every day. You can find me there. If that's not your style, just drop me an email and we can chat anytime. I try to be super accessible. All right. So, find me on LinkedIn. Check out the Ruby AI podcast. It's really fun. We get these brilliant people on. I kind of can't even believe that they all agree to come on the show. But it's amazing. And my co-host is Valentino is brilliant and, knows everything about AI. I mean, you'll learn a lot checking out that podcast.
I totally agree, and I even loved his demo. And I always talk about artificial Ruby. I loved his his meta programming, build a method. It was cool. I've always thought about one day I'm going to do something with that.
Right. Yeah. I know. It's fun. His most recent experiment is that he went and he used to collect, or I guess he still does, collects domain names, and he went and he's got I don't know, 200 of these things. So he took AI and he picked 12 domains and he said, okay, go and build me 12 businesses. Just look at the domain and tell me what the businesses should be. And he's got a post about it too, which is brilliant because he's like, I spent 1 week doing training and it was all this, it was business books and it was also software development. It was incredible. And then 2 weeks of unleash this thing. And then at the end of it, he has he has a product that he's selling based on that. And it's all AI driven. It's really fun.
He's gonna have to let us know how that goes. I have another idea for him that I've talked about. I haven't even talked about on the show. I mentioned it to somebody and they were like, "Oh, actually, that might work." I want to do domain rental. So I get a business idea, and you know how you always have to buy a new domain for your business. I would like to go to someone like Valentino and say, "Hey, can I just rent this for a month?"
Yeah.
And
okay.
Then, and then when the business fails, I'm going to send it back to you.
Yeah. I like that too.
So, Airbnb for domains.
Right. Yeah.
Because we're all squatting on too many of them. But Joe, it was great having you on, and we'll definitely have to get together soon. I don't think I'll be at Artificial Ruby this month because we're at AI Miami, but I will be there next month.
Okay, cool. Yeah, well, enjoy Miami. It's a good time of year to go. I love what you and John are doing. I love the podcast. I'm rooting for you guys. And thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks so much, Joe.